Hello guys and gals and welcome! So I literally just finished beating Gothic 1 Remake, and I gotta say, I liked it. I think my overall rating of the game would be somewhere around like an 8 out of 10. There's some things I take off points for, like the lockpicking is absolutely terrible. On top of that, like bugs galore, just tons of just really weird bugs, like NPCs that follow you indefinitely but are just completely useless and stand in the way, to like important NPCs being completely missing from where they're supposed to be. Just like a lot of very odd things going on, like places where people are not supposed to be attacking you, well, they start attacking you. Also, just like NPCs attacking each other for some reason. Like, just a lot of weird bugs in the game, but honestly didn't detract enough from my playthrough to make me like hate it entirely. As for the lockpicking, my suggestion for anybody who's playing the lockpicking is get a save editor and max out lockpicking skill. It's one of the things that, like, to max out lockpicking, you need a lot of LP, and it's terrible. And the lockpicking system is terrible, just in general. Like, it's just an absolutely terrible system. But when you have, like, master lockpicking, it actually becomes somewhat okay in that, like, you can kind of figure it out in a reasonable amount of time that makes it, I think, fine, right? But, like, without master lockpicking, you might as well just not pick any locks. Either that or use some tools. But even with the tools, it becomes tedious and mind-numbing to the point where you'll get tired of it as well. So even after you do the tools, and even after you figure all that out and you start doing the tools, you'll still not want to do the tools. But if you max out lockpicking, one of the things I noticed is that the locks actually became solvable, like, by a normal human being. And it was great. I actually really enjoyed it once I had the lockpicking maxed out. I kind of just broke down and cheated in max lockpicking. The problem is that the amount of LP required to max out lockpicking is so high that if you try to do that early on in the game, your character will be super weak. And so that's why I recommend just edit yourself in maximum lockpicking. Just move on. Just don't think about it any further, and you'll have a lot more fun with the game. The bugs themselves, like, I was able to bypass most of the bugs. So, like, I consider, like, some bugs to be either in two categories, like game breaking bugs that can't be fixed, right? And then there are, like, fixable bugs. A lot of the times when bugs would happen, they were in the fixable category. It just took a little bit of effort, a little bit of Google searching, some people who had already had those issues. Seems to, like, in general, been pretty nice. Narratively, the story was really good. I actually really liked it. Kind of reminded me of, like, Escape from New York, or Los Angeles, the movie with what's his face in it, the one where they drop him in the middle of Los Angeles and it's like a giant penal colony. I mean, that's basically what they turned this into. It's a giant penal colony, and the story is just, it's fun. Like a giant barrier basically blocking anyone from being able to leave. And of course, not everybody who's here already is permanent residents. You know, factions start to emerge. Most of the people who are here are prisoners, so they're not exactly good people to begin with. There's a couple people here that are not prisoners. Like, you start talking to some people, and they're like, "What'd you do before the barrier?" And they're like, "Oh, I was a ship captain or something." Like, some of the people were actually normal, like, citizens. And then there's people like Gomez who were literally just like the scum of the earth. Like, they were literally prisoners to begin with. And then there was a prisoner uprising and they killed all the guards and whatnot and took over their positions. I mean, it's kind of fun. The factions were kind of weird, though. Like, I liked it. But the swamp faction, it just, like, I don't know, just, like, reminded me of just, like, a bunch of people who get high all day long. And they're sitting there worshiping the sleeper. They don't even know what the sleeper is. We tell them what the sleeper is. They still keep worshiping the sleeper anyway. They're like, so what if he wants to kill everybody? At least we get high. Meanwhile, Gomez is just, like, invested in keeping the barrier active. He doesn't want to break it at all. The blue mages, the water mages, want to break the barrier, but they don't really know how. They just kind of, like, have a half-ass concocted plan. And the fire mages, I don't even know why they're in bed with Gomez, and they end up getting it because of it. The whole story is really fun. I liked the remake. The graphics in the remake were good. The fights were fun. One of my main complaints was just like the way damage works in the game was very confusing in the beginning, and it was very difficult to actually understand how to like play my character. Um, Once you understand how the mechanics work and how to scale your mechanics, it becomes a lot easier. But in the beginning, when you don't understand how the mechanics work, it's not very easy. I'll give you a very simple formula, and this is basically how damage works in the game. So the damage works by adding your strength plus your weapon equals total minus monsters defense. Okay. This means that it is extremely simple. If you have 5 strength, or let's say you have 10 strength, and you have a 10 weapon, then that means you are doing 20 damage. And if the monster has 30 defense, then that means that you are doing 0 damage, right? So you are doing 0. And a lot of the monsters in the game work like this, in that you will find that you do nothing to them. Like absolutely nothing. And the reason is because you don't have high enough strength, you don't have a high enough weapon, and in general you're not scaling your damage properly. And once you start to understand that, you start to scale your damage better. And like to tell you that right off the bat, Diego is your guy, and there is a bug where he kind of like doesn't offer you these services if you don't talk to Thorus. So you have to do the quests properly. But once you do the quests and you get to the point, Diego will allow you to spend LP on strength or dexterity, and then you can also go to, I think his name is Torres. I can't remember exactly. Torres will let you spend LP on mana if you want to go that direction. But in general, like you can scale your strength and you can scale your dexterity, which also allows you to use weapons because the weapons require higher strength and higher dexterity depending on what you're trying to scale. And in general, like you have to scale your strength and dex and to be able to use the higher weapons. And on top of that, you need that strength and dexterity to deal damage to the monsters that have higher armor class. So the higher the armor class, the harder it is for you to actually do any damage to anything. And it gets very frustrating in the beginning because you have no clue what's going on. You have no clue how the damage is working. You go up to a monster, you try to attack it, you do 0 damage, which sucks, right? I mean, it is pretty poopy to walk up to a monster and do nothing. And I mean absolutely nothing. I mean, we're not talking about walking up to a monster and doing 1 damage. And if you play perfectly, eventually you'll kill him. Even if you got to hit him 300 times, you know, eventually you'll kill him, right? No. Now, most of the time in this game, like if you approach a monster and you don't have enough damage, you do 0, which means that if you play perfectly, it doesn't matter. You could play perfectly for a year, you're still not going to kill him because you don't have enough damage. And it's the same opposite way. So the opposite is also true, which is the damage that you take is based on your defense, right? So you have defense of all different types. You have blunt, you have blade, you have pierce, or I can't remember. I think it's called pierce. But like in general, like or is it called point in this game? Right? It's called point. All the different defense types you can essentially beef up by getting armor. You can get jewelry that has the defense on it, rings, amulets, all sorts of various things you can get, right? Well, if you don't beef up your defense and a monster goes to hit you and they've got like 40 damage plus like 30 strength, then what happens is they're doing like 40 plus 30, which is what, 4, 6, 7, 8. So they're doing like 80 damage a hit to you. You know, minus like your meager maybe like 5 blade defense at the beginning of the game. And so you're getting hit for like 75 a swing, and you don't even have more than maybe like 50 or 60 HP anyway. So most of the monsters in the early game level, like if you go to any place you're not supposed to be, you just get one shot. Like immediately one shot. And it has to do with the fact that like you just need to understand how the damage scales in the game. Another thing is smithing. Smithing is the crafting system in the game. It is like completely useless. I don't know exactly why it's so completely useless, but like nothing that you craft is better than the stuff that you'll find at the levels that you'll find it. You'll find a piece of equipment and it'll basically outclass every single thing that you can craft. I never came across a situation where I had a crafting recipe that was better than something that I already had. And maybe it's just a progression problem or an itemization problem, or maybe I just wasn't finding the recipes at the right times. But like, I never could craft anything that was better than my current piece of equipment. And if I did find a new recipe that was better than the last one that I found, I would also find a better weapon, which was better than the previous like thing that I had crafted. So it was like, I don't know. And you have to spend LP on this. And the LP that you spend on smithing also seems to be completely useless. If you'd like to play around with smithing, my suggestion would just be to, again, use the Hero Editor program. There's a couple of them out there, and just give yourself smithing. It will not affect your gameplay in any way. In fact, it will actually make your gameplay worse because you'll be using the materials to make weapons, and the materials are worth more than the weapons you craft, right? So if you give yourself smithing and you start crafting weapons, it will only be a net negative to your overall playthrough, just simply because they're worth less than the materials that you could sell to the NPCs, which is rather silly. Another thing is like NPCs themselves. So like NPCs themselves have money. It's very similar to Skyrim, but I guess it would be in reverse. Like Skyrim is very similar to this game. Is that NPCs have a limited supply of money, so they only have like say 100 or like 200 like coins or whatever. And the problem is that like in the early part of the game especially, I found that I was really running out of money like all the time. On top of this, like the game has a scaling reduction in the price for items of the same type sold repeatedly. So basically what this means is if you go out and you farm a monster and that monster drops you, I don't know, like bloodfly wings, and you farm 1,000 bloodfly wings, like you can't sell 1,000 bloodfly wings to the NPC because like once you sell a certain number of them, they eventually drop to 0 gold and you get nothing for them. Variety seems to be the spice of life with this system, is you want like a large number of things that you can potentially sell. A lot of people told me that, and this was something that I had to learn on my own, is there is basically these hunting recipes that you can get that cost LP, which is your learning points. And you can get things like being able to, extract claws and like hides and teeth and so forth and so on. Well, a lot of people said they weren't worth it, but honestly I think they are. I don't think they're worth it at the beginning because you really don't have enough ore to spend on it, but once you do have ore to spend on it, I would highly recommend grabbing them because it's a huge amount of money. It's just a lot of money that you can potentially get just for selling stuff. Like you can just sell a bunch of crap, and there's a lot of NPCs you can potentially get money from, so it works out. Trying to think if there's anything else. The towns themselves, like so Old Town, was okay. Like I'd say it was okay. I didn't really particularly care too much for like how it was designed, but I understood it's like a castle and it has a bailey and there's an inner castle and whatnot. It was okay. New Camp is too big. Like I don't know what's going on with New Camp. It's like 3 towns like mixed together in one town. Like I don't understand. Like there's the outer town with the Rice Lord, and then there's like the inner town with like the little tavern and like a bunch of other crap, and like the new mine or the free mine or whatever. And then there's like another piece of the town inside with the water mages and all the little huts and whatnot. Like it's a very weird like triple. It's like 3 times the size of like a normal town. And then there's the swamp. The swamp is just like confusing as crap. I didn't particularly like the swamp at all. Like the swamp town, it's just, I don't know what to think about it. It's kind of poopy. Overall, the map wasn't like too large, and I especially once I got the mount. There's a mount that you can get. And I'd highly recommend that you look up getting the mount. The mount is amazing. Definitely get the mount as early as you can. I should have gotten the mount earlier. I didn't know I could get a mount, but once I found out I could, I immediately got it. So yeah, definitely nice. A couple skills that you want to make sure you get on your playthrough is Acrobatics. Make sure you get Acrobatics. Make sure you get diving. Diving is really good too. And make sure you grab. There's one more I'm forgetting. Why am I forgetting it? Acrobatics, diving, and then there's climbing. Make sure you get all three of these skills. They're necessary for basically finding just about everything and going to all the cool places that you can go to. There's tons of secrets that you can get. There's tons of diving secrets, climbing secrets, jumping secrets, like all sorts of places that you can go. Cool freaking golems that you can fight, and trolls, and like goblin camps, and all sorts of crazy things that you can get to. I had a lot of fun exploring the map and just like finding tons of various things that you could, murder. Definitely very good, very 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 fun. There's also going back to the hunting recipes. There's also hunting books. So let me put this in here too. There's hunting books that you need to look for that will also give you the ability to extract specific things, and these do not require LP. And these are actually really good, and you have to take them to a specific person to get access to those. He's actually around the same place that the mount guy is. Trying to think of anything else I can think of. Different weapon types. So there's one-handed, which you're going to be using basically the entire beginning of the game. There's really nothing you can do. This is going to be your starter. And you pretty much have to use this. I would highly recommend you at least get like tier 1 one-handed, even if you plan on going two-handed later. The mastery of the abilities is huge. It makes a huge difference in how effective they are. You can basically parry and riposte and all sorts of other things if you have access to the mastery, but you can't do that if you don't. Two-handed seems to be the best damage. But you really don't get into two-handed weapons until much later in the game. Like, they don't even give you two-handed weapons, and you don't have enough strength to use two-handed weapons until later on in the game. So I wouldn't, like, bet on trying to utilize them. It's just not really a good idea. And then there's bow. Bow is really good, but problem with bow is it does not do damage to most defensive targets. I've noticed this is that the bow just doesn't really have enough damage. Maybe if I were to go full dex, I'm sure that if I did like a full dex build and I only did bows and I just dumped everything I had into dexterity and ignored one-handed and two-handed weapons, it might do enough damage, because as I said earlier, dexterity plus the damage of the bow equals the total. But if you just are getting enough dexterity to put on the bow and you're not actually like dumping stats into dexterity, it just doesn't do enough damage most of the time to damage most defensive targets. And I think you'll find this to be the case. Crossbow has amazing damage. Amazing damage. It also freaking sucks. I could not stand using the crossbow. I will fully admit right here before everybody that the crossbow has amazing damage and blows the bows out of the water. But I will also fully admit that the crossbows suck balls and are the worst things to use in the existence of time and space. I don't understand how their mechanic works. Like, you can't reload them. It doesn't automatically reload. You have to like force the crossbow to reload every single time that you use it, and it won't just reload it. Like, you have to like literally press the button multiple times to force it to reload the crossbow, and if you don't happen to hit it at the right time, it just won't reload. And then you go to aim the crossbow and there's no bolt in the crossbow, and you have to like put the crossbow back down and then put the bolt back in the crossbow, and like the whole process of loading the crossbow and then aiming the crossbow and then taking the crossbow down and then loading the crossbow and then putting the crossbow back up is so annoying that after about like an hour or two of using the crossbow, I literally threw them all away, like, and never looked back. You probably are going to be in the same boat I am. You're going to be like, wow, the damage on the crossbow is amazing, but I can't stand using these things. And then let's move on to magic. Magic is something that is finite, and what I mean by finite is you have to actually have mana. It doesn't regenerate on its own. There's no passive regeneration of any type, or rings or amulets that give you passive regeneration, which means that you have to have potions or you have to have items that will cause regeneration. Now, there are a lot of items in the game, even just ingredients that you can just eat and it will give you like passive regeneration. Like there's plants that you can eat. It'll give you like 14 mana over like 10 seconds or something. And it's actually pretty useful. In general, I didn't find an issue having enough items to restore mana, but what I did notice is that when they start you out, you basically have no mana pool. Like your mana is like 10. You've got like a 10 mana pool, and your spells cost like 10, and you use like one spell, and your whole mana pool's gone. And so like one of the things that you have to do is you have to find Thorus early on if you want to actually cast spells, and you have to deliberately get a large amount of your LP spent on mana. The problem with this is that you only get access to like one offensive spell early on in the game, and it's Firebolt. And don't get me wrong, Firebolt is amazing as a starter, and when you're first killing like the baby monsters, it annihilates the baby monsters. And then you start getting into some of the tougher monsters, and due to the calculations of how damage works, the Firebolt starts to do nothing. And eventually it literally does nothing, and it hurts absolutely nothing unless the monster is weak to fire. And in general, like Firebolt went from being one of the best things in the universe to one of the crappiest things in the universe. Now, the problem with this is that all of the spells are based on circles of magic. Circles of magic. And the circles of magic are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like whatever. I don't know how high it goes, but you know, whatever. The problem is that when you start out, you are baby tier 0. That's where you are. Which means that even if you find a better spell, you can't use it. Even if you have like a person who has stuff in his shop to sell and he's got like a fireball spell in there, you can't use it. And training magic is not exactly very easy. You have to do all the quests to get up to the point where the mages will accept you. The mages put you on a test. Once you go through the test, then you can finally become a mage, and usually it requires a tier of things, like you have to become like a shadow, and then you have to become a warder, and then you have to become a mage, a fire mage, or like for instance in the other thing, you have to become a mercenary, and then you have to become a I can't remember what it is, and then you could become a water mage. Like there's a tiering process to it, and you have to do a whole bunch of quests to get up to the point where you can get access to the magic, and then finally get access to the tiers. And each one of the tiers costs, guess what, LP. So if you want to level up to say level 1, you need 10 LP, and if you want to level up to level 2, you need like 15 LP, and so forth and so on. So getting access to the higher tier magic that actually does damage to the higher tier monsters is next to impossible if you're trying to be a pure magic character. In fact, I don't even think you can be a pure magic character in this game because of the way that they currently have it set up. Now, you would still have to be like a one-handed character to start with, and then once you finally get access to the higher tiers of magic, you might be able to kind of like transition into it. But if you run out of mana pots or you run out of mana restoration stuff, it could become difficult. Now, this aside, was the magic useful, right? So let's just say this. Was the magic useful in the game? Yes. The light spell is great. The healing spell is nice to have. There's a telekinesis spell that pulls stuff towards you. There's an ice spell that you can use to freeze the water, and you can walk on the water. There's all sorts of cool things that you can do with the magic, and I think you'll find that in general the magic is useful. And you also have teleport spells that let you teleport around and whatnot. I mean, it was cool. I think the magic was neat. I just think that if I ever wanted to do like a full magic character, I think I'd be like arsed. I'd just be like just effed right up to arse, because I don't think you can do it. Like I think that it would be next to impossible to do a full magic character from the start. I think you always would have to do like a one-hander or a bow transitioning into a magic character. And the problem with that, of course, is that you would be scaling strength or dexterity where you need to be scaling magic. Armor's kind of hard to come by. So going back to when I was talking about earlier about survival, right? So you need the whole calculation of how damage works. Well, armor is hard to come by. Number one, it's expensive. If you want to buy any armor, it's expensive. And the only armor that you can buy is like really cheap armor. It's crappy armor. And then when you join a specific faction, which you can join whatever factions you want, you get a baby version of whatever armor the faction has. In fact, I ended up buying like one of the digger armors. And I think the first one I joined was like the shadows. And I looked at the shadow armor and I'm like, the shadow armor is literally worse than the digger armor, like that I bought from the shop. So I bought like a digger armor from the shop for like 300 ore, and honestly, the shadow armor was worse. Now you can upgrade them, but then it requires a huge amount of ore to upgrade the armor. So like I did end up upgrading the shadow armor, but I think in total to upgrade the shadow armor, it was like I think it was like 800 plus 600 plus 300 for a grand total of, what is that, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It was like 1,700 ore to upgrade the shadow armor to its maximum capability, which is freaking expensive. And so when I say armor is hard to come by and it's also expensive, I mean it. It's hard to come by and it's expensive, which means that a lot of the times when you're fighting in the game, you just end up dying or getting one shot by just about everything because you don't have the damage reduction that you need to make your character work. In fact, most of your damage reduction, if not all of your damage reduction, is almost always going to come from your jewelry in the beginning of the game. There's a lot of rings and amulets and various things that you can find early on that will give you defensiveness. They will give you blade resistance, blunt resistance, and so forth and so on that you can make your character work with. In fact, that's pretty much what I would use like most of the time during the game because I was tired of getting one shot all the time. Was I literally just picked up like the best DR jewelry that I could and just stacked 2 rings and an amulet just to make my character not die. That was literally my goal. Don't die. It would be absolutely great. Trying to think if there's anything else that I forgot. We could hop into the game real quick and I could like very briefly take a look at some of my stuff. Let me go. That's yeah, that's like the end of the game right there. Let me just like go back to something so I can just pull up my character. So there's some pretty cool like quest log in here. I actually did find the quest log to be quite useful. Very good kind of like keeping of what's going on with the quest so it can keep you on track. There's a pretty interesting glossary of all the people and how much they hate you or whether they're dead or not, which is pretty cool. I actually found that really nice. The stat sheet is going to show you like how much strength and how much dex, how much protection you have, and so forth and so on. You can pretty much just like take this number 95 and you can just add it to your weapons damage, which is 110 in this particular case, and then you get your total damage output. I don't know how much armor the monsters actually have, but it becomes readily apparent once you realize that, like, well, the monster's not taking damage, right? As an example, I told you earlier that the bows, like, this is my highest damage bow is 68. There might have been higher in the game, but 68 was the highest I was able to find. That's the highest crossbow I was able to find in my playthrough, which is 120. So you can see there's a pretty vast difference between the crossbow and the horn bow. But I think you'll find that the crossbows are just really annoying to use. This is like one of the best armors in the game that I had found. It's the ore armor, which is pretty darn powerful. You can actually get it upgraded and make it even stronger. I've got a couple different ones in here though. Like this is the shadow armor that I fully upgraded. And this is the warder armor that I fully upgraded. You get these by basically doing the faction quests. Like this is an example of the mercenary armor when you first get it. It's a baby mercenary armor, so it has basically like no stats. Defensively, like early on, you're probably going to be using things like the Ring of the Iron Skin, which are 10-10 edge and blunt defense. So if you're using 2 of those rings, you get 20 and 20. And then you can also find the Amulet of Armor early on, which is this one, which gives you 15-15. So by the time you're done, if you run the Iron Skin rings and you also run the Armor Amulet, you basically get, what is that, 20, 30, so 35, 35 edge and blunt resistance, which is pretty massive as a early game character to help you keep you from getting one-shot by all the low-level monsters. There's a lot of amulets and stuff in here, but a lot of the times I often just found myself running the defensive options, strictly because, well, otherwise you die almost instantly. So, like, a lot of the times you need the defensive options to stay alive. Lots of fun books. I did read a whole bunch of books. There's a nice little hoochie drawing for you there. I know you like that. Overall, just a really fun game. I'd highly recommend that you pick it up if you're interested in like Skyrim-esque style games. It's also kind of important to talk about the fact that, well, this game came out in 2001. It is a remake of the 2001 game, obviously, so this is a newer version, and they updated the graphics and everything. But for the most part, this is a 2001 game, and came out before Skyrim, before Oblivion, before Morrowind. I believe Morrowind was like 2003 or 2002 or something like that. So when I think about this game, sometimes I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is a lot like Skyrim. This is really fun. But then at the same time, I'm also remembering, you know, hey, this is an older game. This is a game that came out before those. And I'm kind of surprised at how fun this game was, considering how old it is. As always, I appreciate you guys and gals joining. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. I have a full live stream of like multiple days if you'd like to check out my playthrough at any point. And as always, keep watching.